As someone who wobbled through 13 years of school in Norway, never fully feeling like I belonged there, realizing early how the one size fits all approach was, to put it lightly, tedious, homeschooling is the option I'm looking at for my future kids. You're likely more aware of this than most, and that's the fact that there are tons of people waking up to the reality that the current public school system, not only in the United States but in many Western countries, is falling short on multiple, if not all, aspects. There are likely tens of thousands of parents searching for alternatives to the school system you were employed in for 14 years. Now you're on a mission to guide and coach teachers and parents to start their own micro schools and home schools. Can you take us into the decision-making process of ending your career to embark on this mission? Some of the core values that weren't reciprocated in the schools that you worked in, and what your future vision is for the project that you're working on right now.
Yeah. First, thanks for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be talking with you. But I taught for 14 years in public schools. For me, the public school system worked growing up. Like I got really good grades, even though I came from a pretty rough background. I was homeless in fifth grade when I was like 10, 11. And so it worked for me. And so I got into education to make a difference for kids like me. But then things started to change. Like it became highly, highly political. And I really started to notice that when I became a school principal. The politics of education are real, and it impacts things throughout the entire system. And I started to realize that the values that I held as somebody who goes to church every week, raising 5 kids, were not being reflected by a place I was sending my kids for most of the school day. It was taking up a significant amount of their time,
Yeah.
and they were being shown things that I didn't agree with. And so that kind of led to why I left the public school system. I
What are
still
some of the
have that.
things that you didn't agree with?
So the very first thing I got in trouble for and investigated for by my school district is I made a public comment about a transgender policy that the state of Utah was considering. That's where I live. I'm in Utah. I've born and raised, lived here my whole life. And so I made public comment. And my comment essentially said, if you eliminate a school's ability to communicate with parents about this issue, you are putting them on opposite ends and making them fight with one another. And that's bad for the child's education. And so I made public comment to that effect, and I became very quickly investigated shortly after I made that public comment, which I did on my own time, on my own money. I just made the comment. I made sure that people understood like I was speaking for myself and nobody else, and yet I was investigated for that. Then shortly after that happened, so that happened like the first month of the school year. The second month of the school year, COVID policies were still in place, but rapidly changing. And a parent came to me and said, "Hey, my kid's behind in school. They've tested positive for COVID, but they don't have any symptoms. It's been 5 days. Can they come back to school?" And I messed up and I said, "Yeah, I think the decision is yours as a parent." And that was apparently the wrong decision. So those are just a couple of them. But again, a lot of these like cultural, social issues are what made me want to back away. I mean, my kid was taught in, you know, middle school science class that, creationism could never happen, that God doesn't exist. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, you're not supposed to do that. That's illegal. And B, like, you don't get to just push your ideology on my kid without talking to me first. And so those are the types of things just pushed me out of the school system. I was ready to walk away, and I
Yeah,
did.
I think that's those things are really reasonable. Like what biology is one way. We have thousands of years of proof of that. Another
Right.
thing that I also, I mean, that's reasonable to talk about
Yeah.
those things. I think it's brave of you to voice that in a culture that is increasingly moving away from those values.
Mm-hmm.
Um, COVID is a different thing that I also agree with your like asymptomatic like isn't that good enough. We had this issue here as well,
Yeah.
and we
And
have
to
a
be
culture where
clear, like
people
I
also.
wasn't necessarily taking a political stand on it. I literally thought that the parent had the choice at the time, and I
Yeah,
just got it wrong. But combined with what my stance I took on transgender policy, like they're just like, yeah, we like that. I got in trouble for that.
but it just makes sense to want to be a link for the parent and the child to be able to have a better life together. Like as a teacher, as a principal, that's really honorable for somebody to take the time to try to make that relationship stronger. I'm curious to know what you think and who do you think benefits from those policies. Like I've tried to understand because I try to take a step back. I don't try to uh, understand things that are beyond like where's this push coming from, like who benefits from the kid not having a good relationship with their parents, who benefits from you being told to to be in the middle of that, to separate it, who's benefiting from the ideology being pushed by the school system without the parents permission.
And you know, you're getting all the way back into the history of public schooling, at least in the
Hmm.
United States, probably across the
Okay.
world. But it's the reason public schools were started was about control. They were worried about in the United States. Horace Mann is considered the father of American public education system.
Hmm.
He was pushing it because he was worried about immigrants who were coming in who had maybe different values. He a lot of people were actually against like things like the Catholic Church and what they were teaching. He wanted a form of Protestantism. I can't say the word Protestants. He wanted a form of Protestants belief system being pushed in the public school system, and so he's like, we need to create a government school system that pushes these things that most Americans believe, but not all of them. You know, he was worried about Irish immigrants and Italian immigrants at the time, and the values that they were bringing into the country and whether or not they aligned with American values, and so a lot of that came about, and it continues to be a place for governments to push what they think is important, and
Hmm.
depending on where you live,
Yeah.
that's the type of school system it tends to be. So, for example, California tends to push a lot more of the left leaning ideology because the elected officials lean left.
Yeah.
In places like Utah and Oklahoma, they tend to push right leaning ideology because the elected officials lean right.
Hmm.
And if you're not part of the majority of that area, your values don't get taught
Yeah.
or they get ignored or whatever it is. And so that's I guess I don't want to say it's a nutshell, but I mean it's a big question of like who benefits. The
Yeah.
government gets to push the policies and the ideology they want, and public schools have always been a political battleground because of that.
It's a slippery slope, if you ask me.
Totally.
So you become disillusioned with the system.
Mm-hmm.
You realize that you have the power to do something, maybe even more impact outside of the system. What are you building right now? What's the foundation?
Yeah. So when I left the public school system, I joined the Libertas Institute, which is a nonprofit think tank. We push to change hearts, minds, and laws to make a freer society. That's like our slogan and things like that. And
Hmm.
so I joined them and I found this new educational offering that I call micro schools. And really, it's this catch all term of all these really small, fairly innovative schools that are being created by former public school teachers. And again, as a former public school teacher myself, I saw these and I was like, this is amazing. And it brought back
Hmm.
that fire to change the world that
Yeah.
I had been missing for a while as I worked as a principal. And so I saw all those things. And so now what I'm working on is I'm trying to help teachers who want to leave the public school system leave and start their own individual private school that they are completely in control of.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I really want to talk about because that's what's fascinating to me. I've spent a lot of time with my girlfriend to try to understand what are the options, especially for us here in the West, or I guess in Europe. She's um, um, she got a teacher's education here in Norway, but doesn't want to fill one of those vacancies that the school system here needs. But that's something I want to talk to you about later as well. What I wanted to touch on right now before we move on was those after college programs that sounded interesting to me. I heard you say it in a different podcast. What are those about?
Not sure what you're
Okay,
referring to.
maybe I
Sorry.
wasn't specific enough. No, it's in the How We Learn podcast. I think it was the name of it, where you
Mm-hmm.
were speaking about how kids that are 18 are supposed to like know what they are going to do with the rest of their lives, which
Yeah.
doesn't make a lot of sense because we're still in that time in our lives. We're still curious. We want to know more about things. We want to have more options. Is there a program now in place? I didn't really understand the basis of the conversation, but is there a program for them in place after college where they can go and test different things that they're interested in? How is that?
Yeah, there are actually quite a few different programs out there for kids who maybe want to explore their career options outside of college.
Yeah,
I view college as just a continuation of that public school standardized system, right?
yeah,
It's being pushed, especially in the United States, as like this is the way that you can provide for your family, and if you choose a different path, that's weird, and you shouldn't do that.
it's weird
Um,
that that's still the narrative. Like it's quite clear that the story has changed.
yeah, but it's still being pushed by enough people that you're the regular everyday mom and dad who maybe aren't as involved in politics. They're still being told that narrative and they believe it,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's something that needs to be overcome. I call it the middle class trap, actually.
yeah,
This idea of like, okay, at 5 years old, we're going to take your kid, we're going to put them in the standardized system. We're going to spend the first 5 or 6 years preparing them for middle school. Middle school is going to prepare them for high school. High school is going to prepare them for college. College then is going to prepare them for a career, and then you're going to spend 30 to 40 years working in some career, and then when you retire at 60 or 70, you can do what you want. Like, that's a long time to wait to find like joy in what you're working on.
yeah.
And that's not to say that people don't do that, but for everybody to follow that path just seems ridiculous, seems like the wrong
Yeah,
idea. Like,
yeah,
there's so many people who love being outside working with their hands, they find so much joy in that, and yet we're pushing them into offices and
yeah.
cubicles and things like that. And so yeah, so there's a ton of different programs out there. So
Okay,
LeBears
that's
has
good.
actually just purchased one. It's
Hmm.
called Praxis, where they work with kids right out of high school, and they start them on like a variety of internships for a year in a whole bunch of different places, and help them find a job in that. And so after a year after college, they're in a fairly decent job, making $60,000 as like a 19-year-old, and they
That's
don't
pretty
have
good.
the tens of thousands of dollars of debt that other college students have when they
Yeah,
graduate at 23
yeah.
from the local university.
And that you can't claim bankruptcy on.
Right.
So I heard you also tell a story about a girl that wanted to be a veterinary, and she her mom got her a position at a veterinarian, and she realized after 2 months that that's not where she want to go. I wonder how many people, how many young kids experience that. Like they jump into this 7 year path that they have probably paid for. I don't know how that works. So I never really went into that, but you probably have to pay something up front or you have to go into debt, whatever. What a great option to be able to spend a few months with that thing that you think you're going to love, but then suddenly you don't like it anymore and you realize that there are now 1,000 other doors open that I can go explore. that makes so much more sense.
It absolutely does. Yeah. And I remember that story, and
Yeah,
it saved her so much time and money to realize that this is not what I want to do.
yeah,
And so why isn't that aspect of it the norm of like, hey,
yeah,
let's get you into like 5, 6, 10 different job
yeah,
offerings, go
yeah,
experience it, go take
totally.
part of it, be an employee in that, shadow the person, and actually decide like, yeah, I like this or I don't
Yeah,
like this, and therefore
yeah,
I want to spend the time to
yeah,
get the degrees and certifications I need to do the job. um, we just don't do that. We're just like, oh yeah, go to college and figure it out, spend $10,000 to $15,000 a year and make no income
yeah,
for the next 4, 5, 6 years, and decide then if you want to do what you want to do. And so I mean, I went to college. I changed majors 4 times in college, and so
yeah,
I spent money I didn't need to spend trying to
yeah.
explore what I wanted to do.
And time that you can't get back. I mean, money
Right.
you can replace, but in a country as big as the United States, having options for what type of school you want to go to or have your kids in makes a lot of sense. But in a country like Norway, where I grew up, it's less obvious. New data from our education ministry shows that 17,600 positions in the Norwegian school system are filled by someone who isn't properly qualified. But there isn't a lack of teachers, as there are enough teachers educated to fill those positions. What's lacking is the desire to fill those vacant positions. What you're doing with the Education Innovators Association in Utah would be very helpful here in Norway as well. And to tie all this together, I'd love to know, how would you describe the pedagogical approach you're now practicing to someone who's never heard of it before?
Yeah. So I don't. I mean, I have my personal education philosophy of what I believe, but what we're doing with Education Innovators is I don't push any kind of pedagogical philosophy there at all. I'm I'm just helping these teachers understand the business of running a school, and because they're coming in with their own teaching ideas. Some of them are using what's called a classical education, right? They're diving deep into things like Shakespeare and reading Homer and reading all these great authors and books, and diving deep into that. And it's a very traditional educational offering. But there's others that are coming in, and it's more of a um, what letting the students really follow their interests, and it's curiosity driven. So I was talking with one founder today, and she arranged for her class of 10 kids to go and meet with people who provide alternative health options, really diving into like, how do you heal your body as opposed to just going and putting medicine into it. Like, that's what her kids were interested in, so that's what they went and did, and helping them really explore their curiosities. And so those are two very very different pedagogies, um, but the business of how you find kids and run your school all have principles that follow the same. And so I tend to lean more towards that, uh, probably student driven, let's follow your curiosity mode of learning. And we bring in the great books based on what their interests are. So for example, my 17-year-old daughter wants to be an author, so we're reading Shakespeare, who was like one of the most prolific authors in history,
Yeah,
and talking about like how did he tell his stories.
yeah,
And so you can combine both of them, but we're doing it because she loves writing,
yeah.
as
So that
opposed
was,
to a set curriculum.
yeah, because that's what's so interesting to me. Because if I was put in a place where I got to choose, like, oh, no, right now this is what I'm interested in, and then I would be put in that position to, I don't know, study or practice or learn in what I am currently interested in, I would have been like, I didn't turn out that bad,
Yeah.
but it would have been a lot better if I was guided in a direction that I was personally interested in walking. So I've been curious about these micro schools, because it does sound like to me that it is the teachers or the coaches or whoever is deciding to start the school to choose or to agree alongside the parents what kind of path or what kind of teaching system they want to use for their kids. So how would that work? Like, okay, I'm a I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years old, and I say, hey, I want to do Shakespeare, and then I want to learn how to write stories, so I study Shakespeare, and then I go on for, I don't know what, 3 months. They're like, is that something that the kid gets to choose? Do we switch topics whenever they want to? Like, how is that?
No, that it's a really good question, and I'll be honest. I don't run a micro school, so I'm not sure how they do it. I know how my wife and I do it in our homeschool that we do with
Okay.
our young children. So we kind of have a standardized time of like, and some of my kids are still young; they're 9 and 11, and so we're spending a lot of time on what everybody agrees is the basics, right? You have to know how to read. You have to know how to do basic arithmetic and be able to um, operate that way. And so we spend probably like 2 to 3 hours on those two topics a day, and then in the afternoon we do explore their interests, and we do it as a group. If one of them's interested in a certain science project, they'll go and do that, but they also have time where they can explore it themselves. So my
Mm.
11-year-old daughter is actually loving things like craft work. So
Yeah.
she's learning to crochet. She's learning to do cross stitches. She's learning to do embroidery and to sew and all these different things because that's what she wants to learn. So she's learning how to thread a needle on a sewing machine, and she's made herself pajamas.
That's
She
so
made
cool.
herself a pillowcase that she can put on her pillow at night. And so she's making these pretty simple, low cost projects, but she's spending the time, and my wife is like
Yeah.
showing her a couple things on the sewing machine, and then she's off to the races. Same
Yeah.
thing with my son. He's interested in more like sports and things like that. So I go out and I play basketball with him, once a day or things like that. And so and then he's like super huge into history. So we're actually building an entire history curriculum um, for him using
Amazing.
AI to help him like understand like why did World War I start? Like we talk about like the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, but like all the time, but
Yeah.
why did they assassinate him? Like that never
Yeah.
gets talked about. And so like building up to that, like
Yeah.
you have to give them a ton of background knowledge in order
Yeah.
to do that.
So someone who would be critical to this would ask, so okay, yeah, they get to do. By the way, it's awesome that you guys get together and do it together. That just
Yeah.
there's so many benefits to that. But then you're saying the afternoons they get to do whatever they want. Someone who's critical to this would say like, yeah, but how is this preparing them for life?
Well, here's the thing is like what the typical American public school system involves people of the same age sitting in a room together for the entire day listening to somebody else talk. What jobs are like that? Very few. Like you're never
Yeah.
in a job where everybody's the exact same age or within a year of each other, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm sitting in an office right now and I have somebody who's probably 10 to 15 years older than me and somebody who's 10 to 15 years younger than me. Um, there is, and they're ignoring all the research about how beneficial play is to a child's learning. Play is probably the most underrated learning activity out there
Yeah.
because we as adults we see it and we think it's frivolous
Yeah.
for these kids to be out there and having this imaginary game together, building a world in their minds and walking through that. But the reality is that is so critical to their learning.
Yeah.
I was talking to a different micro school founder who said like, yeah, like she started her school last year, it was first year. She had a girl come to her, 8 years old, couldn't read. She spent a couple hours a day working on what we would typically consider like academic work, and allowed them free play the rest of the day. So like half the day they're free playing as part of their school, and she can now read and is ahead of where she's supposed to be in the public school system.
Amazing.
You have to give them time to like actually process the information.
Yeah.
It's something that even I probably need to do is just give myself time to think, and
Yeah.
ability to think is so important.
Yeah.
It's how they operate. There's a great book by Peter Gray called Free to Learn,
Mm.
where he talks about how children learn through play. And when we let them just explore, they become so interested in these topics, and they're learning the critical things, right?
Yeah.
If I can read and do basic math, I can learn anything
Yeah.
with an internet connection.
Yeah.
And it will not take me long to learn it. It'll be far faster.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but because I'm interested in it, I'm learning it. But not only am I learning it, I'm retaining it
Yeah.
because I care about it. And
Yeah.
so letting them do these things, I mean, we in the American school system, they still teach kids how to sew. So my daughter's just doing it earlier than they would. So it's not like it's some like crazy thing
Yeah.
that she's doing. It's
Yeah.
just something different. And we always have a physical education class in junior highs and high schools that where they're going and they're learning to take care of their bodies. So my son's just doing that at a much earlier age. So I just look at it, I'm like, all the things that they're forcing on people are less important. It's more like I need my kid to know how to learn for themselves,
Yeah.
and that's what that time provides.
Yeah, that space is just the space that they get through the play is just makes total sense that would make it easier for them to learn.
Yeah. Well, and how many
Yeah.
people, like, when they get stressed out at work, if they were able to just go for like a 5 minute walk, 10 minute walk, it's able to like clear their mind. They come back and all of a sudden, like, whatever problem they were dealing with at work, they now have solutions, or at least they're able to focus and really crack the problem, right?
Yeah.
Free play is the same for kids. It's just them
Yeah.
getting up and having a chance to clear their mind.
Yeah, it's that, especially for the schools, that I feel like we're taught what to think and not how to think. But then
Yeah.
also when you are playing, and you're a child, you're also playing with other kids, different ages, even if it's an imaginary world, they learn to play well. And that is what we
Yeah.
all really doing. Even though you're in a job that you have a lot of colleagues, what you're really doing is just structured play. You're trying to reach a goal, and
Yeah.
you're putting pieces together that will eventually and hopefully bring about the results that you're all trying to achieve. So that human communication, that interaction, those repeated interactions in play just makes sense that would be so valuable for them when they grow up.
Yeah, for sure. Like, going back to my 9-year-old son, like, just the other day, there's this like internet challenge where you go door to door and you start with something really small and trivial, and you ask the neighbor, hey, would you be willing to trade something bigger or better for
Yeah.
this item, right?
Yeah.
Well, he did that for an entire hour. He's learning sales skills.
Yeah.
Like, he's learning how to talk to people who are not his peer groups,
Yeah.
and talk to them in a very different way.
Yeah. And
And
value transaction.
he chose to do that.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't push him to do that. He's like, hey, I want to do this. Okay. So
Yeah.
we started off with like a small, like, 3D printed thing, probably cost us like 15 cents to print. And he ended with like a 300-piece Lego set,
That's so
right?
cool. That's
And, and,
amazing.
and he did it in, 90 minutes. And he went out and he gave them value. In fact, he came home with, um, he wasn't happy with his final trade, and went out again later because he came home with Star Wars Christmas ornaments. And I'm like, the neighbor down the street loves Star Wars. I bet
Yeah.
you could take these to him and he would give you something awesome. And that's where he
Yeah.
got his Lego set.
It's so valuable to understand that, because
Yeah.
if that neighbor didn't like Star Wars, like it's it teaches marketing, it
Mm-hmm.
teaches there's so many elements there that it's hard to wrap your head around, like all the things that they're actually learning in that process. It's so
Oh, for sure.
fascinating.
For sure.
And it's so fascinating that the core system that we're all pushed through haven't woken up to that. Like, why are we so slow to adapt to new data, to replicable science that has to do with how kids learn? Like, this is not new.
Yeah.
We know how kids learn effectively. What are we waiting on? Like, why is it taking so long to change?
Yeah, it goes back to our earlier
Yeah,
conversation
true.
is public
Yeah,
schools are a political
yeah, yeah,
entity.
yeah.
They are not an education entity.
Mm,
They they run based on the politics of the government that controls them.
yeah,
And so if it's politically expedient that the
yeah,
schools change, then they'll change. If it's not, then they won't.
mm,
And so they just have to wait. And it's the same thing with like any kind of like disruptive technology that's out there, right? So you look
yeah.
at in the United States, I don't know if they had this in Sweden, but
Norway.
Norway. Sorry,
No worries.
I'm like I know it's one of those two. I guessed wrong.
It's okay.
I apologize. But I don't know if Norway had like Blockbuster Video. I don't know if you're familiar with that company. It's just a video
Blockbuster,
rental store.
yes. Yeah, Blockbuster, yeah.
Yeah, so Blockbuster Video. Well,
Mm,
Blockbuster Video in 2007 was ignoring Netflix.
yeah,
They ignored them because
yeah,
they're this huge bureaucratic uh, business that could change, but they're like, no. Our staple is people coming into our stores, renting a DVD and
yeah,
taking it home. Like
yeah. I
that's
read the
what we
story.
do. And
Yeah,
that was the year that Netflix started streaming.
yeah,
And now I can't tell you if there's a Blockbuster that's even open anywhere in the world. I don't
yeah.
think there is.
No,
There might
there.
be
Yeah.
one for nostalgia somewhere.
Oh, yeah. That might be right.
Yeah, but I mean, the as a business, it basically no longer exists except
Yeah,
as like this nostalgia thing for people my age who are 45 and
yeah,
remember going to the video store. So I can be like, hey, this is how we used to get movies, kids, right?
yeah,
Like that's the only reason it exists. It's no
yeah,
longer a money making giant that it was.
yeah,
And the same thing happens with the public school system is they're very bureaucratic, and the more bureaucratic you are, the harder it is to change.
yeah. Because there's
and
so
and
many
when you
steps
involve
and
government
people.
there, it becomes
Yeah,
even more bureaucratic because they're not actually worried about the bottom line and money because they can
hmm
just tax people more to get more money, which is something that Utah's dealing with right now. People want to raise taxes because they're serving fewer kids. So
Well, that's
it's
a little backwards.
yeah, exactly.
That
But
reminds me of yeah. Go ahead.
but these small schools, these parents and teachers who are starting these schools, they're flexible, they're nimble. They can when they get two or three kids who want to do something different, they can respond to that so quickly.
Yeah,
And if a curriculum isn't even working for a certain kid, they can just get a new curriculum.
yeah,
It's super easy to make a
yeah,
change, and
hmm
you can do it over and over every
yeah,
few weeks if you needed to.
yeah. It's so that is probably the best selling point.
Yeah.
The adaptability, the
Hmm.
flexibility. I mean, it's invaluable. It's a complete U-turn from whatever the school system is offering.
Right.
And that's exactly what people need, I think. They need that ability for their kid to grow
Yeah.
in what they need to grow in, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, even with the like, if the school itself has kind of a standardized model, let's say, where like, oh, we're going to get through these topics, and it's not necessarily this, um, individualized, you know, method that I really love. They can still like slow down much easier because of
Yeah.
how small the school is,
Yeah.
right? They can, and some kids they can go at you look at like math for example.
hmm
Um, some kids latch on to things like adding and subtracting fractions super easy, and some don't.
Yeah.
Well, those kids who latch onto it really easy can go ahead if you're doing an individualized method, and the
Yeah.
kids who need to slow down can slow down, and they get to set their own pace. And because they're setting their
Yeah.
own pace, they know and they're motivated to keep working because they know they
Yeah.
don't have to wait for the slow kid, and they're not going to get so frustrated because this class is going faster than they're ready for.
Yeah.
They're going to stay in that kind of Goldilocks zone of this is just hard enough that I'm going to put in a ton of effort because I can see my achievement just if I just keep working, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
so
when it's
valuable.
standardized like that, it you kind of teach to the middle, except the
Yeah.
problem is that no kid actually fits that middle. It's
Yeah.
either too slow or too fast for everybody.
Yeah, that reminds me of an image that I saw, like a black and white image of like a bunch of different animals standing in a row, and there was, I don't know, a teacher or some sort of an animal character saying that they were going to judge them by their ability to climb the tree. And that's what it feels like. That's
Yep.
what it felt like to me. Keeping all this in mind, John, like everything we've spoken about, what's something you'd wish more people knew about?
I wish, especially here in the United States, that parents knew how many options they have within short driving distance. I would say that a majority of Americans have a one of these schools, these micro schools, within a 20-30 minute drive of their house. And it doesn't matter which state you're in, they're popping up all over the place. Um, I wish parents would just like take a minute to look around rather than,
Yeah,
oh, my kid's 5, they're going to the local public school. Um, and I think more parents are doing that,
yeah,
but I want to see more and more of them continue to do that because it's what's going to drive change
yeah.
across the entire education system faster than anything else.
It seems like more and more people are waking up to that.
Yeah.
What's a commonly held belief or assumption in your field that you think is limiting progress or innovation?
I would, well, I have so many opinions regarding this. Uh, I think it again. It's like the public schools are good enough. I think again that idea of the parents.
Yeah,
The public school is good enough. It worked for me, therefore it will work for my kid. Is
yeah,
what many parents think. But the one thing I will say is it's different. Having worked in it for 14 years, it's very different than when I was in
yeah,
school. Things have changed dramatically,
yeah.
and not everybody is going to fit there.
If you could go back and instill a piece of wisdom in your younger self, what would it be?
I wish I would have followed my curiosity more as a young
Mm,
man growing up. There's I've been learning a lot about the world's greatest entrepreneurs over history, and that seems to be the one uniting thread between all of them is they let their curiosity um, just win. So they became curious about whatever it was. So I mean, you look at like today's um, famous entrepreneurs like Elon Musk. He is super curious about what does it take to get to Mars, and so he starts SpaceX to start building rockets. Right? He built everything he's done. He owns Tesla because he wants a super great battery to put on his trip to Mars, right? He has a tunneling company called the Boring Company because he
mm,
knows he's going to need to do some boring when he gets to Mars to build a a settlement there. And so being able to like just follow my curiosity, I wish I would have done that more, and I
yeah.
probably would have ended up starting my own school if I would have done that.
John, you've gone from teaching classrooms in the Weber School District to shaking up education policy at the Libertas Institute, all while homeschooling your 5 kids. Let's rewind to your high school days when your science teacher lit a spark that set you on this path to education. Picture us in that classroom. What was it about that teacher's style, storytelling abilities, or just sheer charisma that inspired you to become an educator? And how do you channel that inspiration into your fight for school choice today?
Yeah, that yeah, he was my absolute favorite teacher growing up because it was obvious he had a passion for biology. And not only that, he had a passion for us learning about biology. And so he created lessons that sparked our curiosity. I remember activities that we did in that class, when we built our own self-contained ecosystem in a couple 2-liter bottles of soda, right? Like we emptied the bottles, we put them together, we had the whole water cycle going, we had small insects living inside of these things, and it was its own self-contained terrarium of of life. And we were able to just watch that happen and how amazing like that was, and it just sparked my curiosity. And actually when I went into education at first, I actually thought I would become a biology teacher because of
Mm,
how much I enjoyed his class. And so his ability to spark curiosity um, was I think what's made him stand out as such an amazing teacher.
That's amazing. I think a lot of people would benefit from listening to you speak. And I really hope that you succeed with your project, with all your projects. I think not only in the United States is in need of the systems that you're building and to expand, hopefully globally. I think you've been an inspiration not only to me, but hopefully to the people that listen to this. And I think people here are disillusioned as well. So, yeah, I would like to see our kids live in a different world. And when I say our kids, I mean the generation that is yet to be born.
Yeah.
But it just makes sense. It just makes absolute sense. So I really appreciate what you do. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. And yeah, I hope we can do this sometime in the future again.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you, John.